All right, thank you very much. There's probably nothing worse than somebody saying I'll be brief, because they never are. Anyway, one thing that we've, probably the biggest problem we've had is the Dewdrop Social and Benevolent Hall. To begin with, the name's too long to fit on a ball cap. And a lot of people still confuse it with the Dewdrop Inn, which was at the LaSalle Hotel in New Orleans, and was actually truly a nightclub, where this was actually a part of the neighborhood social hall. And anyway, and part of a benevolent society, which was organized by a group of women in 1885. The building was dedicated in 1895 in January. We're now celebrating its 121st year. To give you a little bit of background on Mandeville, Mandeville is to the north of New Orleans on Lake Pontchartrain, and it had fresh air, clean water, and such, and outdoor activities. So when it first started out, about the same time the Dewdrop was born, there was continual steamboats coming across the lake, and people would come over. It was kind of a place to party. Actually, in addition to the fact that they could, the boats would land on a pier, people could walk in. There were also motor cars which came out, picked people up, and actually would take them into different parts of Santana, including the Beaver Springs, and some other somewhat resort places in the early 20th, or well, late 19th and early 20th century. There's a little picture of a motor car coming out. Anyway, and on the wharf frequently they had this contraption which allowed the motor cars to pick up freight, say, on the lower floor, and the passengers to disembark on the upper one. There were some other sort of unique things, long slides, and actually what they did is they had these cypress sleds that they would drag up to the top and then go down on. I've seen a couple of them, and they're damn heavy. They had bathhouses and stuff were out on the lake. And here's a picture that's in the 20s after the 1918 hurricane. I think it's 18, might have been 19, but anyway, you can see most of the piers at that time were missing, and actually had started construction of a cypress seawall. It's a bathhouse, and some of our local people enjoying the water. And a little street scene. Looks almost like it's out of a Western movie, doesn't it? One of the local hotels, and strangely enough, that's a tarpon hanging there on the rail. Another hotel, this one was torn down in about 1950 something. I know people actually stayed in it. This was the Santana Hotel on the lake in Mandeville. This was another one which actually burned down as a private dwelling at that time in 1978, the Ottoman Hotel. This later became Bishak's Restaurant, but you can see the casino sign on there. So it was, kind of an interesting little place for people, in the fact that it was really a place for entertainment, and almost every house had a room for rent. This was DeBall's Garden. Here again, you can see it was a house above, but the lower part became a bar, lounge, seafood, so on. Those dogs out front were still out at various places later on. And now we finally get to the Dewdrop. This is one of the older pictures I have of it, but you can see how nicely framed it is by the oak trees. It was a real nice feel to it. This is the neighborhood where the Dewdrop is. The little house on your right was the summer home of the Anderson family. Andy Anderson played trumpet with the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, died in the 80s. His father played bass with Buck Johnson, and this is directly across the street from the Dewdrop. That little house, the Anderson home, has been purchased by the city. We're presently converting it to some handicapped accessible toilets, which we don't have now. It's just another house in the area to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. Back to the Anderson summer cottage. Now this is a little bit more unique. You see this lovely house that's next to the Dewdrop? Well, that was built in the year 2000. And anyway, a little scary when that happens. We've since then created a historic district, and hopefully we'll get our historic guidelines a little bit more up to date, and also a little bit more in keeping with the area to get back to where the neighborhood will be more in scale with where it should be. Incidentally, the people who live in that newer house are really wonderful people and a great asset, even though I don't think anyone's too happy with the architecture. The little house on your left was called the captain's cottage because it belonged to an African-American steamship captain. He was the only African-American captain on the lake, and when he would come across with the boats, which you saw previously, he would spend the night there, and of course his crew would go on up to what was called Buck's Bar to spend the night. This is a little church that's right next to the Dewdrop. It's really been kind of a custodian of the building for many, many years. It was kind of a family church, and the family sort of died off. And now the church ladies have really sort of adopted us, and they prepare dinners for our concerts, which has worked out to be a real win-win situation. The church now has the first income in its history and has been able to redo things. In return, we actually lease their toilet rooms. We pay them a small fee each time we have a concert. And anyway, there's the proximity of the church to the Dewdrop. And like I say, it's been a real win-win situation for both of us. They've now got a new roof. Their toilets have been upgraded. The Dewdrop itself is what they call barge board construction. And if you're not familiar with barge board construction, it's really just you have a top rail, a bottom rail, and you build like a fence. And then once you have that in, you can cut your openings and go from there. As you see, there are no windows. It's just shutters. The little design on the walls were done in 1978 for a movie called Pretty Baby, where they actually filmed a wedding scene here. So anyway, also the floor, you can see the little painting on the floor. That was also done for it, and actually they had a stair or some steps going up at the end of that onto that stage. The stage has been modified numerous times, but this is the way it is now. And the benches are new. The benches along the walls were actually there when the city took over. The Dewdrop was, as I said, built in 1895. It was a very active place for anybody and everybody who in the jazz world to play. They were on the circuit, and a number of very fine musicians actually were in Mandeville and really didn't even bother to go across the lake. They liked to play their music when they could, but at the same time they didn't want to give up their day job. And a lot of them were masons and painters, etc. You'll notice that it at one time really was a dance hall. In other words, the benches weren't there since it's been taken over by the Friends of the Dewdrop in the city now. In the early 40s, the building was basically shuttered, and the new Benevolent Hall a couple of blocks away was activated. It later burned down, and by then the Benevolent Halls had run their course, and so it just sat vacant for really roughly 50 years. And then in the year 2000, local retired school teacher Jean Green donated the building to the city of Mandeville. She had purchased it from the heirs of the Benevolent Society. And the city tried to run it for a while, and of course cities can't run cities, so it's doubtful they can even run this. Anyway, they also moved at the speed of continental drift, so it's and right after Katrina in the year 2006, the Friends of the Dewdrop was organized, and we started having concerts and really started out just trying to do the best we could. The Dewdrop, obviously, after 120 years, was starting to show a little problems and everything, although, quite frankly, for something that old, it was in pretty good shape. You can see one of the brick piers was starting to give way a bit, and when we pulled one out, you can see the cribbing from where we took the weight off of it. You can see there was no footing. The bricks just went right down into the ground about 4 inches and then went up, and it drove the building inspector crazy. It just aggravated the heck out of me. The building's basically a board and batten type construction, and as I said, it's a barge board type construction. Barge board is a type of construction in Mandeville. It's not, even a lot of the old air houses in New Orleans are that way. One board thick, then you cover them up with something. Could be wallpaper on the inside, it could be a coat of paint. This was a rebuilt pier. Since the bricks were sun-baked and the border was generally just a lime putty, we generally had to come back. Wow, I'm getting really good at this. Anyway, they would have to be a little bit, you can see we actually added a footing. That made everybody really happy at City Hall. Even though I had to go over the building inspector's head in order to do this. He said, I've never seen footings like that. And I said, well, that's your problem. So, anyway, all the piers were fixed and replaced except for one with a cornerstone. And the cornerstone's got a little crack in it, so nobody wants to touch it. We just put some more shims in between that cornerstone and you can see the remnants of, at one time, dark green creosote paint. That was almost every old African-American house, and a lot of the poor white houses were done in this creosote paint. It was generally a dark green, in some cases a dark blue, but there's just a little bit of that remnants, and really, I think the only place you get it now is in New Zealand. This was when we discovered that after getting the piers and everything, that the building had leveled the building, incidentally. It was a settling of it, got it sort of leveled. It wasn't too bad. But now, for some reason or another, the wall was listing something like 6 inches to the outside. And in spite of all this labor and, sort of personal engineering there, trying to get it straightened out was difficult. I don't know that you can see this, and I'm not smart enough to point it out, but at each of the joists, the ceiling joists there, we ended up having to cut a notch because we couldn't straighten the building out. It had essentially been, over the years, bowed and so on. You can see one board's missing. We actually replaced some boards, and the floor actually, we came in underneath it, sistered up the regular floor joists and added plywood in between. So now when the gospel band gets in there and stomps the devil and the whole neighborhood levitates, the building hangs in there. You can see where the bench was removed. You see the new board that was put in. The trick to those was, after we got them in and everything, showing, shoring and so on, and using a couple along and a little bit of push and so on, and the building now slid over into the notches, and then we just blocked it in on the outside. You can see the board sitting there that hasn't been finished. What we did is, after we had the boards put in, is we found someone who did movie sets and had them come and touch up the boards, so now the new boards look just like the old boards. They're hard to tell the difference. And When the building was first obtained by the city in the year 2000, and incidentally, I'm an architect, and I was kind of became the steward for the building and worked with local contractors who fortunately were musicians themselves and really took a great pride in the building. So everything got done cheaply and easily and so on. Well, anyway, the first thing we did was tore out two toilet rooms. And the holes in the wall was the vents for the ladies' room. Here again, this, no windows, just shutters, the same thing. See that the oak trees give it a little bit of character and everything. And this is from one of our concerts. You see that it just kind of overflows inside out. Nearly all our concerts now are at night. We only do them in the spring and the fall because it's just too damn hot in the summer and too cold in the winter. Although we do have a Christmas concert, and the one that we had last Saturday was probably colder than the Christmas concert because it'd been raining and a cold front came through. And anyway, everyone was griping, but the building does not have any artificial heat or air. And most of it is done with hand fans. There's Deacon John. He comes in with a pretty good sized band and sound system, but he loves the place. He's been back 5 times. And the biggest problem we have now is he brings 450 people to a building that holds 100. And so I said, we're having to start scaling back and maybe not having people that anybody's heard of. This is the Pres Hall Brass Band. Preservation Hall has 2 bands, one they're jazz, one is the brass band. And you'll notice the lighting in there, those were, like I say, Christmas lights that were strung across the street, no longer needed by the city, but it provides the proper atmosphere that we're looking for. We have a little bit of stage lighting behind the sign. Here again, the same set painter who touched up our walls is the one who built that sign. And it actually, in some of it said Dewdrop Dance and Social Hall. And since it's really become more of a concert place, we actually got somebody to change dance to jazz. There you go, Pres Hall. You can see it was a little chilly that day because everybody's kind of bundled up, but they kept everybody warm. This is a view from the outside. See Big Daddy-O, Tim Ernst. And here is, Luther Kent. He was with a smaller group that night, and he's given us a little toast with a beat of beer. And a beat of beer has been one of our saviors. Because we meet certain criteria, we don't have a liquor license, they can donate beer to us. And consequently, that is our main source of revenue, other than just the fact that our gate covers the bands. We, from the very beginning, said we would not exploit the bands. We wouldn't exploit anybody if we could avoid it. And in return, actually, though, they generally give us a discount or a good price. Most of them would rather play there than almost anywhere. Like I say, Deacon John just kept coming back by his own request. Chris Thomas King has been there a number of times, 4 times, I believe. And here again, when can I come back? And like I say, the biggest problem is with these named entertainers, we're getting just, a little too much. We charge $10 a head. It's our philosophy, the Friends of the Dewdrop, that we have an international treasure and that it should be shared with the world. I think that's very, very important. And like I say, just the reason we charge $10 is if you say anything free, God knows who will show up. We do charge for beer and wine, and we sell t-shirts and other merchandise. The merchandise really ends up being more for advertising than it does for income. Anyway, the problems that we have are the problems that all the rest of you would love to have. We really do have a good time. This, I'm sorry, it's not a little bit more legible, but that's the cornerstone of the Dewdrop Social and Benevolent #2 of Mandeville. and the names are all the ladies who started the Benevolent Society. A few little drawings. This is the dewdrop, and its proximity to the church, and there's a little hall in between where women do their prepare their fried catfish and fried chicken and red beans and jambalaya and what have you. I sometimes wonder if people come to hear the music or just eat the church ladies' food. A little map of the building's 20 foot by 48 feet. It's got the shutters. Does not have any thing other than that slight raised stage. Well, it's not slightly raised, it's higher than this one. But you had to raise the stage if you're really going to hear the music, because people absorb the sound. You can't see the musicians and what have you. Well, I said, you know, the three fat women with fur coats could absorb all the sound before it got past the stage. Anyway, that's kind of the deal. Now, when we go from here, what I would like to point out is that the dewdrop has, actually, because we have been very successful the last 10 years that the Friends of the Dewdrop have taken over, and we grew very slowly for a number of years, well, 2 or 3 or 4. Many times the board and the band would outnumber the patrons. It was just one of those things. It's actually very enjoyable if you're not losing too much. At first we would make money on maybe 1 out of 5 concerts. Now we generally don't even lose money on any of them, maybe 1 a year, but we've been doing more things where we had Ellis Marcellus recently did a concert, and we ended up not only giving him the gate, but gave him another contribution on top of that for his center. Fountain Blue High School has one of the top jazz bands in the country, and is presently, or in a few days, we'll be leaving for Savannah for a national competition. I think they were one of 12 bands, and we here again let them perform. They brought in some guest artists, had a wonderful time. They raised $3,000 at the gate at $10 a head, and we ended up matching it, so they had $6,000 to travel with. So, you know, last year the Dewdrop gave away $17,000 and still came out with a little bit ahead, and that's been one of the good things. The other thing that we're running right now is the Dewdrop Jazz Kids program, where we are employing people like the Press Hall Band, the Chris Thomas King, gosh, goes on, but anyway, and we're employing them, sending them to the various schools. And Jason Marcellus put on a workshop for us. And so we're not only providing some employment for these musicians, but they are now conveying the jazz heritage and the music heritage of South Louisiana to these various country schools and everything. Not long ago, the band said, well, all right, kids, let's second line. And the kids looked at each other and said, what's a second line? So that makes you understand just how important this Jazz Kids program is. That here they, you know, are there. They really need this, and I'm really proud of the board and the people who let me take credit for all their hard work and in putting together all these education and philanthropic endeavors that we can, you know, have the privilege of doing now. Thank you very much.